There are a number of sensitive topics in the introductory psychology course. And of course, we want to be prepared to address these topics in a meaningful way that will engage students. And one of those topics is mental health. And way back in the day, when Charlie and I were going through undergrad and grad school, there was a lot of research on the topic of depression. Rightfully so. It's important. It's a huge topic for us. But in the years since, and this is one of the ways I address the topic of mental health, there's also been a number of researchers, psychologists, scientists who have looked at what it takes to buffer you in times of stress, in times of challenge. What are the things that you can do to have a buffer to in some way help you mitigate the things that might lead to a mental health issue like depression? So what I'm talking about is the field of positive psychology. So one of the things I will do in every one of the classes I teach is I make sure students understand the research of the positive psychologists that they may not have, likely have not had in any other class. So we're going to learn about strengths. What are your strengths? There are a couple of different surveys out there that can help you have a better understanding of what might be some of the strengths that you have as a person. And we do that because in times of stress, that's a good time to fall back on the strengths that you've identified that you have. For instance, if one of your strengths is bravery, that's not something that just leaves one day to the next. That's something that you have. If bravery could come in the form of asking a tough question of someone that you need to ask in order to come up with a better understanding as to why maybe you're not getting along. The positive psychologists have talked about the importance of things like gratitude, genuinely expressing thanks for somebody who has helped you or for somebody who's done something for you. And the gratitude, it doesn't just have to be on the grand scale. Mom, thank you for being my mother. It can be, hey, the person sitting next to you, thank you for greeting me today when I came in. I appreciate that. Those acts help build up this buffer for mental health issues. And it's a way of showing students that, yes, there are things like post-traumatic stress, but there's also the opposite of that. There's also the fact that people can come through traumatic events and be stronger than they were. There's research on that psychologists have done as well. So teaching about resilience, teaching about gratitude, teaching about strengths, these are high interest topics that I think address mental health in ways that are helpful for students to understand that there are things you can do to help decrease the likelihood that you will experience a depressive episode or have depression.
Well, difficult issues will come up in a psychology class. They come up in every class. We can't avoid it. I mean, real life tends to seep into our classes, but perhaps more so in psychology than in other classes. There are a few things that I would encourage you to think carefully about. One is that we cannot and we should not promise our students a confidential environment. I have heard through open classroom doors, teachers explicitly say this: what happens in this classroom stays in this classroom. Even if that were the right thing to say, it would be impossible to enforce. Students talk about what happens in classes. And I think it's a more practical approach to assume that everything that happens in your class will make it outside your classroom, not that it'll stay in your classroom. So that's important. A second thing is that students need to be aware that you are not teaching a therapy class. Your goal is not to provide therapy. That's not in any way, shape, or form your goal. Students may learn things in class that help them to seek therapy or counseling. And you can push individual students toward that if you suspect that that would be appropriate by using the appropriate resources in your school district. But never think that your function in that classroom is to provide therapy for your students. Most of us aren't licensed for that, and it makes it impossible to achieve other important goals of your class. The last thing I'd say is that many of us, as we prepare to teach about things that might produce difficult situations and are hard to teach, things like suicide, things like depression, mental illness, and so forth. I know when I started, I really worked to prepare. So I'd have the facts straight and I could talk about it and I wouldn't get so nervous that I said the wrong thing. What I neglected to consider sometimes was my audience. And it didn't take me too long to realize that no matter what the topic was, and whether the topic was planned or unplanned, if we were discussing schizophrenia, if we were discussing alcoholism, if we were discussing abuse, if we were discussing rape, I learned to assume that that issue personally had touched someone in that classroom, either as a victim or the friend or family member of a victim who was dealing with that crisis, either in the past or right now. And I learned this because occasionally when I was teaching early on, I would all of a sudden look up and become aware of my students and see that somebody was crying in the back of the classroom. And I thought, oh my God. And then it dawned on me that this was a person that was dealing with that. So I always assume that I'm going to touch nerves for students and try to follow up, on the way out of class. Are you okay? Or whatever. I mean, we can't ignore those subjects, but know that no matter what you talk about, it's going to be a real live issue for some of the students that are in that room that day.